The man who controls Iran's nuclear weapons, its proxy armies, and its decision to go to war or make peace is lying in a hospital room in a holy city, and nobody inside Iran's government can get a binding answer from him. That's not speculation. That's the intelligence assessment that 3 separate U.S. officials confirmed to CNN on Tuesday. And it explains everything: the collapsed Islamabad talks, the silence from Tehran, and why Air Force 2 sat fueled and ready at Joint Base Andrews with J.D. Vance on board, and then never left the ground. If you want to understand what's actually happening inside this war before the next strike or deal announcement drops, stay with this. Because the picture emerging from Tuesday's intelligence disclosures is unlike anything analysts expected 53 days into this conflict. And if you want this level of analysis delivered to you daily, hit subscribe now, because tomorrow's development is already in motion. When Donald Trump posted 2 words on Truth Social Tuesday afternoon, seriously fractured, every major outlet called it a diplomatic taunt, a provocation. Classic Trump pressure tactics aimed at Tehran. They were wrong. Those 2 words were a clinical diagnosis, backed by intelligence shared simultaneously with Gulf allies through a diplomatic memo authored jointly by American and Israeli intelligence agencies. And once you understand what that diagnosis actually means inside Iran's constitutional structure, the last 53 days of confusing signals, contradictory statements, and collapsed negotiation rounds stop being confusing at all. Here is what no other outlet explained to you Tuesday. Iran is not a dictatorship in the way most people picture a dictatorship. It is a theocratic republic with an elected president, a parliament, a guardian council, an expediency council, an IRGC command structure, and above every single one of those institutions sits one office: the supreme leader. The constitutional title is Waliye Faqih, the Guardian Jurist, and the power that office holds is not ceremonial. On the 3 domains that matter most to the United States right now: nuclear enrichment policy, the future of Iran's proxy forces, and foreign policy commitments, no Iranian official can bind the Islamic Republic without the explicit blessing or clearly delegated mandate of the supreme leader. Not the foreign minister, not the parliament speaker, not the president, not the IRGC commanders. Only the supreme leader can make Iran say yes to anything that matters. The supreme leader is Mojtaba Khamenei. He became supreme leader on February 28th, the same day U.S. and Israeli strikes killed his father, Ali Khamenei, his brother, his mother, and his own son. He survived the strikes. Iranian state media confirmed that immediately. But within hours of the confirmation, they began calling him a janbaz-e-jang, a veteran wounded in war. And what followed over the next 53 days has been one of the most extraordinary information management operations any government has attempted in the modern era. No verified live footage of Mojtaba Khamenei has appeared since February 28th. Not a speech, not a press appearance, not a verified real-time communication with any foreign government that independent sources can confirm. What has appeared is AI-generated video. State media released footage of Mojtaba walking into a war room and studying a map of Israel's nuclear research facility. Analysts flagged the artifacts within hours. The Times of London, citing that diplomatic intelligence memo shared with Gulf allies, reported that Mojtaba Khamenei is being treated in Qom in a severe condition, unable to be involved in any decision-making by the regime. The memo went further. It described preparations for a mausoleum in Qom, built large enough for more than one grave, with analysis suggesting the groundwork being laid may be intended for Mojtaba himself alongside his father. Defense Secretary Hegseth said publicly in mid-March that Iran's new, quote, not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. When Trump was asked directly whether Mojtaba was alive, he said, "I think he probably is," and then added, "I think he's damaged, but I think he's probably alive in some form." These are not the words a president uses about a functioning foreign head of state. These are the words of a president who has read the intelligence. And if that intelligence is accurate, then Iran does not currently have a functioning supreme leader, which means Iran cannot currently produce a binding decision on anything. Stay with this, because this is where the 53 days of chaos inside Iranian diplomacy suddenly become completely logical. The U.S. submitted a list of broad deal points to Iran ahead of the second round of Islamabad talks. Days went by. No response, not a rejection, not a counteroffer, not even a message through Pakistani intermediaries asking for more time. CNN reported Tuesday that U.S. officials believe Mojtaba Khamenei's efforts to remain hidden have disrupted internal Iranian government discussions to the point where the government cannot produce a unified proposal. That phrase, cannot produce a unified proposal, is the exact phrase Trump himself used in the ceasefire extension announcement. He wasn't editorializing. He was describing a structural reality. Iran's proposal generation process for decisions of this magnitude runs through the supreme leader. The supreme leader is unavailable. The process is frozen. What is not frozen is the factional war filling that vacuum, and it is loud. The IRGC position, do not negotiate under blockade. The ceasefire is a ploy for a surprise strike, and Iran must take military initiative. Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf, who publicly called the Islamabad table a surrender table on Monday, simultaneously led the first round of negotiations at that same table and was preparing to lead the second round when it collapsed. Foreign Minister Araghchi has been publicly declaring Iran negotiated in good faith, while privately signaling through Pakistani channels that a nuclear enrichment deal is achievable. President Pezeshkian, representing the reformist-aligned faction, believes Western engagement is Iran's only economic exit. And an IRGC-affiliated advisor published a statement Tuesday urging Iran to take military initiative and calling Trump's ceasefire extension a trap. Every one of these factions is publicly active. None has the authority to override the others. The one institution that can override them all is in a hospital in Qom. Iran's military commander issued a warning to Gulf states Tuesday. If their land or facilities are used by enemies to attack Iran, he said, they should say goodbye to oil. That threat is aimed directly at the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia at the precise moment the diplomatic faction is supposed to be producing proposals for Islamabad. The IRGC is threatening Gulf oil infrastructure while the foreign ministry claims to support diplomacy, while the parliament speaker calls diplomacy a surrender table, while the president signals openness to engagement. This is not strategy. This is an institution in free fall, and Trump named it accurately. The economic arithmetic is not waiting for Iran's internal politics to resolve. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent posted Tuesday that due to the ongoing U.S. blockade, Kharg Island's storage capacity will be full within days. Kharg Island processes approximately 90% of all Iranian oil exports. When storage fills completely, the wells that supply it cannot pump. Iran's primary revenue source shuts down, and shut-ins that happen too rapidly or improperly cause permanent damage to reservoir pressure, meaning the output capacity may never fully recover. The oil sanctions waiver Trump temporarily extended in March expired Sunday. The blockade holds, the storage is filling, the factions are fighting, and the supreme leader is in a hospital. General Jack Keane advised Trump on Fox News Tuesday evening to stop talking and finish it. Target Kharg Island, strangle the economy, and end this. That option is on the table. The ceasefire extension is the other option, and Trump chose the extension specifically because Pakistan asked him to. Field Marshal Munir and Prime Minister Sharif requested the extension on the grounds that Iran's leadership paralysis is temporary and resolvable. Whether that reflects real intelligence about Mojtaba's condition improving or Pakistani diplomatic optimism is not publicly known. Trump's ceasefire extension carries no end date. It lasts, in his words, until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded, one way or the other. One way is a deal. The other way is the destruction of every power plant, bridge, and piece of critical infrastructure that the hawks inside this administration have been targeting for weeks. The path between those two outcomes runs directly through a hospital room in Qom. If Mojtaba Khamenei recovers enough to authorize a unified Iranian position, a deal framework becomes possible. If his condition deteriorates, the IRGC faction, already publicly urging military action, may decide to act without Supreme Leader authorization. That restarts this war under conditions no ceasefire framework can contain. 53 days ago, a strike killed Iran's Supreme Leader. His wounded son took the title but may not have the capacity to exercise it. State media is filling the vacuum with AI video. 5 factions are publicly pulling in 5 directions with no authority capable of resolving them. The Islamabad talks are stalled. Kharg Island is filling, and the United States is waiting. Not because diplomacy has momentum, but because Pakistan believes the paralysis is temporary. Trump called it seriously fractured. That assessment, confirmed by 3 independent U.S. officials and a joint intelligence memo shared with Gulf allies, is the most significant intelligence disclosure of this entire war. It is not a taunt. It is a diagnosis, and the prognosis is the only question that matters right now. The next move in this war does not come from a battlefield. It does not come from a Truth Social post. It does not come from a sanctions announcement. It comes from a hospital room in Qom, where the answer to whether Iran can produce a unified response to the United States will determine whether the next 53 days end with a signed framework or with strikes that reshape the Middle East for a generation. We track this story daily, and the next development is already breaking. If you want to be ahead of it, not behind it, subscribe now. 1 click. You won't miss the moment this changes. Drop your answer in the comments. With Iran's Supreme Leader incapacitated in Qom and 5 competing factions unable to unify, do you believe the institutional paralysis resolves into a deal? Or does the IRGC act without authorization before Kharg Island forces the decision for them?